slowly. We are live. Hello, and welcome to another Sphere Live. Today we will be talking about tax havens. We have our guests, Tara and Yago, and they will be sharing their Gen Z point of view and their expertise. Yago, that's you, with the expertise. So, should we start with the video first? And then we can do a short round of introductions? Perfect. Okay.
¡Ay! Paraísos fiscales, playas paradisíacas, cajas fuertes llenas de billetes, narcotraficantes y dictadores compartiendo mojitos, congas de políticos corruptos con maletines llenos de billetes. Pues no. Actualmente los mayores agujeros negros de dinero en impuestos se encuentran en el corazón de Europa, pero los gobiernos y los organismos internacionales siguen mirando hacia otro lado. Según la Tax Justice Network, los territorios de ultramar de Reino Unido, Países Bajos, Luxemburgo y Suiza son los responsables del 55% de las pérdidas de ingresos fiscales del resto de países del mundo. O lo que es lo mismo, nos cuestan 237.000 millones de dólares en impuestos perdidos cada año. Solo con el uso que hacen las multinacionales estadounidenses de los paraísos fiscales europeos, capitaneadas por las tecnológicas, nos hacen perder al resto 23.000 millones de euros en impuestos al año. Según la Tax Justice Network, estos son los paraísos fiscales más perjudiciales para el resto. Pero la lista negra de territorios no cooperantes de la Comisión Europea es esta. ¿Por qué son tan diferentes? Dos cuestiones. La primera es que la propia elaboración de la lista excluye a los países europeos. La segunda es que esta lista fue hecha para luchar contra la opacidad bancaria y la evasión ilegal de impuestos, pero la cantidad de impuestos que se paga en cada país no se tiene en cuenta. De esta manera, si uno de esos territorios firma un acuerdo en el que se compromete a dar información en caso de que haya fundadas sospechas de que un terrorista o un corrupto guarda ahí su dinero, pues ya no es un paraíso fiscal. Pero la cantidad de impuestos que se paga, según la Comisión Europea, pues no tiene nada que ver. De esa manera, Irlanda, con un 12,5% en impuesto de sociedades, no es un paraíso fiscal. Luxemburgo y Países Bajos, con sus ridículos impuestos a las rentas traídas desde otros países, no es un paraíso fiscal. O la pequeña Andorra, con su 10% de tipo máximo en impuesto de sociedades o sobre la renta, no es un paraíso fiscal. Escándalos como el de LuxLeaks o los Panama Papers, investigaciones como las de Oxfam o Tax Justice Network, nos demuestran que los paraísos fiscales no tienen playas, son rascacielos en las principales capitales europeas, que esos dictadores y esos narcotráficos han sido sustituidos por los principales empresarios de Silicon Valley o de las multinacionales europeas, y que ante la pasividad de las organizaciones internacionales, el periodismo independiente y la movilización ciudadana son más necesarias que nunca.
That was a great video, by the way.
Thank you. It was quite fun. It was quite funny. we got a lot of fun doing the video. Actually, it was quite nice.
It looks good. Definitely, I love the opening.
Should we start with a small round of introductions?
Sure.
Okay. Our Gen Z, would you like to start first?
Yeah. Hi, my name is Tara, but my full name's Tamara, as it'll say on the screen. I am the head of PR for AreWeEurope, who does work with Sphere. And I am Gen Z. I know some things about taxes and tax havens, but I definitely don't know as much as I feel like I should.
Okay. My name is Yago Alvarez. I'm journalist at El Salto. We are a cooperative media that is based in Madrid, in Spain. And I'm the person who coordinates the section of economy, the economy section in El Salto. So I used to write about tax havens, debt, or economy, or banking, etc., etc. And we are part of the Sphere project. So.
And we're very happy to have you both. So, should we give a little definition, maybe, for our viewers of what tax havens actually are?
Let's say, in short, we can say that what defines a tax haven, it can be like two different characteristics, right? On the one hand, like I say in the video, is the banking secrecy. No? These territories offer total opacity to their clients and company. No? It's impossible to see who is behind them, who is behind the bank accounts, who is behind the companies. It's really difficult or impossible to follow the money, where it goes, when it's distributed, when they use one company to move the money to other companies. If they do it in one of those countries that have the secret vacancy, it's impossible to follow it. No? So I think it's probably one of the main characteristics of a tax haven. No? So that's perfect for like I said in the video, no? For corrupt people, tax evaders, or drug dealers, people dealers, or arms dealers, etc. No? The other feature, the other characteristic that made a country a tax haven is the low or zero taxation. No, in other words, they don't pay almost tax in this kind of countries. No, there are tax havens of all kinds. I think there are even a tax haven for each kind of tax. No, there are some countries there where you don't pay any of benefit, the profit taxes. There's some where you don't pay like personal wealth, no? That are perfect for rich people, and there are others where you don't have to pay like particular or different types of taxes. No, for example, it's really well known how United States technological companies they base always in Netherlands or Ireland because they have a specific low taxes for those kinds of companies. So I think that probably are the two main characteristics of a tax haven, of a country like that.
Okay, and Tara, what do you think when you hear the word tax haven? Like, what comes to mind?
I mean, I think I've always had quite a stereotypical view of tax haven, which I think was really well demonstrated in the video, especially like I said, the opening, you know, that it's a tropical paradise, people have a really easy life, that, you know, they can be really, really rich out of it. But then there's always the other side that I've always known about, that it really can affect anyone with a really low income really badly. But also, I just feel like you hear tax haven and you just think tax fraud, kind of something illegal, something very shady, and something that generally only benefits the person at the very top. And that's kind of my view of tax havens, I think, which again, like I said, it just follows the stereotype.
I think that's most people's views of tax havens, actually.
See, I think that's the point, no? That usually not only at the top of the people, no. There's one thing that that almost everyone thinks, no, probably. The other thing is that everyone thinks that everything in a tax haven is illegal, no, and it's not. It's not. It can be legal, no. The taxation of Ireland, for example, of Luxembourg is completely legal, no. For example, so I think that's the point that we try to explain on the video.
Yeah. And what would be the dangers of having those tax havens?
As I said before, it's the perfect place to hide for all kind of criminals, no? So that's one of the main probably dangers, no? Or probably that's the main dangers that come out of mind or come to our minds when we think in that, not it's only for illegal things, illegal people, etc. But I think that the biggest danger is that the tax revenue loopholes, no, that all countries are suffering, the gaps that they have in the last decades when we are talking about to recollect taxes for the countries, no. These tax havens are made for rich people and they are made for multinationals and big companies, no. So if you see in the last decades, the companies and the high income people, the rich people, are contributing less and less and less to the countries, no. So I think that's the main problem, no. That there are those tax havens are stealing money for other countries. So and on the other hand, one of the thing that happens after is that when the country need money and they cannot tax big companies, all the taxes go to the people, no, to the low income people. No, you can see if these people, if the companies contribute less and the country need monies, at the end, the country, the state is gonna tax more to individual through taxes of income or consumption, for example.
So it just increases our taxes, basically, an enormous
Exactly.
amount.
To us, to
Yeah.
the low-income people.
Yeah. Tara, what do you think, like, what comes to mind when you think of dangers of tax havens? Have you ever thought about those as potential dangers?
I mean, I think, and this is something that's kind of already been said, but from my point of view, is that they've always contributed to the rising, well, just to the increase of financial crisis, and like how that can really pretty much just destroy livelihoods in poorer countries. And then, especially in those poor countries, you have everything else that's happening there as well. That, I mean, in most people's opinions, tax havens just don't need to happen. You know, if it's going to be increasing taxes already, you've already got a huge part of the community that's on very low income that will be struggling already. This is just this added extra, which, let's be honest, they just don't need. So I think that's kind of the main danger that I was aware of with them. Yeah.
Okay. And you mentioned also in the video, also in your previous answer, about the companies and how they just move with, like, the center of a company in other countries with lower taxes. And yeah, how else do you think that the companies use the tax havens to avoid their taxes?
I think there are probably like two main ways to avoid the taxes using the tax havens. No, the first one is fixing their tax residence there. No, so if they have their clients or their benefits in other countries, but they say that the benefit is created or the end of the benefit is getting there. No, that's, for example, to use a normal example that everyone can understand is Netflix, no? Where the European base of Netflix is in Netherlands. So when you pay your Netflix account, for example, for here from Spain, the money goes directly to Holland, not to Netherlands. So that's why the company Netflix say that the whole benefit in Europe is getting in Netherlands. That's lie. It's a lie. It's not true. I'm paying my money from Spain. I'm getting a service in Spain. They are getting a benefit in Spain, but the taxes are paying in a tax haven like Netherlands. No, and the other, I think the other way to avoid the taxes that using the tax havens are we can say like strategies of triangulate the benefit. For example, using between different branches, subsidiaries of the same company. For example, Apple, Apple, what they do, Apple Spain, for example, is sell me an iPhone, and the iPhone costs 100 euros, for example, really cheap iPhone, costs 100 euros, for example, and what they do, Apple Spain buy to Apple Ireland the phone for 95 euros, for example. So the brands, the subsidiary in Spain only gets 5 euros of benefit. They pay the shop in Madrid, they pay the people who have working in the shop, so they don't get benefit in Spain. But the subsidiary, the Irish branch, get a huge benefit in a country where they don't pay their taxes.
Okay. I think that's pretty clear. Tara, do you have any follow-ups on that?
I don't think so. That's definitely falls outside of, I think, what I knew and what I know about tax havens. So it's great. I've definitely learned something, and I don't think there's anything else I could put into that. But the only thing I would say is it's so funny that I've never really thought about companies like Netflix. You know, I use it pretty regularly, and I never thought about anything like that. But it makes complete sense because, again, I think this goes back to what I said earlier: is the stereotype of tax havens in my head is that you do think of arms dealers and drug dealers and people traffic and human trafficking and all of that. Obviously, not good, not good at all. But you just don't really think about the rest of the companies that we use every day and that really dominate a huge part of the global market. As having tax havens and using them and making the most money, which from a business point of view, you can understand it. But then you think about how good their publicity is, that they've kept all of this out of the main, public eye, for lack of a better term. Unless you go looking for this information, it's not really presented to you. So yeah, that's it.
Okay. Tara, I'm going to start the next question with you. Why do you think that tax havens exist?
So, I mean, okay, so taxes to an extent are a social contract, right, between the economy and the consumers, the inhabitants, the citizens, no, if that's the word. So tax havens, in my head, they exist to be able to let companies or people keep the majority of their money. You know, a lot of people can lose a lot of money in taxes, and that makes sense. You know, I'm sure everyone at some point has experienced the issue of wanting to pay taxes and trying to pay taxes and just not being able to make ends meet. That is not something that's uncommon at all. So I'm assuming tax havens kind of started to come about when, purely on human nature, people would want to try and avoid paying that much, and it snowballed out of that. I mean, the basic idea of it is that I think if anyone is offered, if it was totally, you know, and it is to an extent legal, but like if anyone was offered it and it was very hush hush and it wasn't really going to hurt anybody, then you would take it. You would take this opportunity. That is general, again, human nature. So yeah, I think that's kind of how they started, at least. And now obviously they've snowballed into something, but it still blows my mind a little bit that something like this that can cause so much strife and grief and damage to a community and to a country is still legal, and is still, or at least legal, and that people are able to carry on doing it.
Legal-ish.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It just kind of, I think that's it. It's just that it started off with this idea that someone had, which is totally human and that totally makes sense, because it would have started with someone who was struggling, and it would have carried on. Someone found a loophole, and that loophole was never closed. So I think from my point of view, that would be it. But I'm really interested to hear what the actual the actual correct answer is to that.
No, I think that answer was correct. No, I mean, it's your point of view, it's what you see. I mean, it's not better than mine. Probably it's correct way. If I have to see why they exist, I think the short answer is because of capitalism. No, that's the the short answer. No, right now, or I will say the last 2-3 decades, for the big capital, the financial sector, the big companies, is starting to be more and more difficult to find benefits, no? To find markets where they can get benefit to give to the to share, no, etc. So one of the main strategies that the big companies have used in the last 2-3 decades, the main strategy that they develop is don't pay taxes. No, I mean, there is a huge industry of the evading taxes. No, there is the big four, for example, no, PricewaterhouseCoopers, Deloitte, etc. They have huge departments that they use to what they call the take tax plan. I think it's in English is tax placement or tax something like that. No, the main thing that they do is to help companies to pay less taxes as possible. No, so I think that's the main point. No. For example, if you think like 2 or 3 decades, 30-40 years ago, when you thought in a tax haven, you always think in Switzerland or some islands in the Caribbean, no? But now we can see how there is a race to the bottom from countries, no? There's a race to lower taxes, no? There we can see now how Ireland or Netherlands, Luxembourg, Malta, and there's a lot of Caribbean islands. There's a lot of British territories, no, like Isle Man or Man Island, etc., no, or Virgin Islands, etc. There's more and more countries, like for example, also Singapore, that they are trying to attract companies and big wealth people, rich people, to their countries, just offering them to pay less taxes, no. So that's why, no, and then like I say, as Tara says, it's greed, no, it's no more than greed and want to benefit more, no. And as I said at the beginning, capitalism, no, this system, this economical systems says that you always have to win more money as possible, and if you have something to do it. If it's legal, you can do whatever they want. You can do whatever is in your hand to pay as less as possible. No.
Yeah. Did that answer your question? Do you get a correct definition?
I would say that sounds like a pretty great definition. It's good because I'm glad that my view of it wasn't too far off. As in, obviously, it's not the I studied this or this is what I do. You know, this is what I've looked into. But I am glad that my general view of it wasn't too far off, because I mean the one thing that I've always disagreed with, and this obviously changes country to country, but in England, when whatever level of schooling you're at, unless you're studying finance or something like that, you are taught nothing about taxes apart from the fact that you should pay them, and that is it. We are taught nothing about it until you're kind of thrown in the deep end. And you know, I think I got my like all of my information kind of from my first job and definitely from my parents. You know, I started working when I was 14, so it was my parents that helped me actually get money back because I was underage. But it is just astounding to me that kind of when you get to out of uni age or even at uni, and you're suddenly meant to know about all this, and people start talking about all this, and it seems like, for the lack of a better phrase, yeah, no one told you about this. No one told you what you were meant to do and what you weren't meant to do. And someone tells you this is bad, but then someone tells you that this is okay, and you suddenly have to navigate your way around and have your like opinions about things that are good and bad. And you're kind of thrown into, for lack of a better phrase, like this really grown-up world that most people aren't educated about, because also it's kept out of mainstream media. You know, unless there's some huge scandal which is going to be really juicy and makes it into kind of tabloids, and you know, if you don't go looking for it, the general public wouldn't have access to it. So yeah, I'm glad that my little bit of education about it is paid off, but at the same time, it is something that I really think needs to be taught.
Yeah, it should be included in general education, for
Absolutely.
sure. In general, taxes, filing them, what you know about them, tax havens, everything.
Yeah, just I think even it doesn't have to be kind of an ongoing class or a course or something, but it is something that, you know, if they want people to go out into the world with skills to be able to survive, this is something we need to be able to do. Because I've heard stories of people accidentally tax avoidance purely from not knowing how to pay their taxes. And you know,
or getting into huge debt.
Yeah, absolutely. That's absolutely it. And it's, you know, at the end of the day, if we're not taught how to do it, how are we expected to actually be able to do it?
Do you have any kind of tax education in Spain?
Not at all. Not at all. I think. I mean, university or something like that. But
but only if you choose to go that direction.
Exactly. There's no about the education. I think we are moving forward. No, I think it was one of the questions.
Yeah, but we just jumped.
That's okay. About the education, I think that the main thing, the most important thing, is the people don't have the education about how important is public services. And public services are paying by taxes, no? So I think that's the main point. I think that the neoliberalist culture war, it's been for 40 years with that idea of that the money is better in the pocket of the people, not in the government, and that the taxes are practically stolen, no? So that the governments are stealing money to the people by taxes, no? That's one of the main that liberals have introduced in their brains, you know, in everyone, in almost everyone. So I think one of the main education, more than what is a tax haven or how to pay taxes, is how important is taxes for the public services. For example, no, you want to have a hospital, if you want to have a school, if you want to have police, firemen, etc., you need to pay taxes. So that's the point, no, and also, it's really important to explain people what is a progressive tax system, no? Where richer people have to pay more than poor people, no? So where the big companies that gain a lot of money, they have to contribute in proportionally to what the money that they have. So I think we have to start from there, no? To put an eye on the important thing that how important is public services and taxes.
I completely agree. I mean, it sounds so simple when you're told it, but until you're told it, you have no clue, and it makes. I think the thing that's a really good example of that is in the UK, you have a lot of people who are voting that the NHS should be privatized. But I don't think they understand, and that's obviously one of the biggest, in my opinion, one of the biggest benefits of the UK is that we've got the National Health Service, which is free because we pay for it with our taxes.
Exactly.
So we don't have to pay healthcare. We're not paying kind of 100, 200 or more pounds a month for healthcare. But not a lot of people understand where the payment for that comes from. So you've got people who are fighting to privatize that and not really understanding that it actually would be a lot worse for people in every walk of life if everyone suddenly has to pay for private healthcare, because then absolutely everything's going to go up. So yeah, like it really is just an example, and it's so simple to learn as well. And then people have this reaction that if you don't know it, suddenly you're stupid. But how are you meant to know it if you're not taught it? You know, it's maybe you're not stupid, but it's so obvious. Again, if you're not taught it, how are you meant to know it? Why would this be a question you would go out and ask? But yeah, I agree. I think it needs to go into the curriculum somehow at some point.
Yeah,
so that
in some way.
Some way, exactly.
All right. So, you mentioned in the video about the EU cities and the list of havens that they're not included and they're completely different, and you compared them. And the question would be, why do you think that the EU cities are not included in the list of havens?
As I say in the video, the same European regulation does not allow member states to be included in the list of non-cooperative territories, they call it. So that's the point. We say in the video, fail. What if you want to point out to the countries that are helping people to avoid taxes, but you don't want to point to the countries that are in the heart of Europe, So the list is therefore of little use. You cannot use it alone. But also I believe there is an element of, how you call it, like window dressing, like you want to show to the world that you are fighting against tax avoiding. So it's quite hard, to try to explain to the world that you are fighting against tax avoiding when you are allowing that Ireland or Luxembourg or the Netherlands are helping companies to avoid. So I think it's the construction of Europe. I think the construction of Europe, it was made for companies, for rich people. So they don't want to destroy that. They have been building that for the last 40 years, so it's quite difficult to point to them. But what they are doing, what is happening is what I said before. There is a race to the bottom of taxes where only rich people and companies are winning.
And probably that's why most tax havens are in Europe as well.
Yes, exactly.
And we don't really know about them.
But I mean, it makes sense. You hide something in plain sight, and it's not even hidden. That's the genius part of it.
Sure.
We just don't really pay attention to it.
Yeah, true.
All right. I think those were the questions that we had prepared. Would you like to add anything else?
I don't know.
I don't think so, apart from just, I think, thank you. Just because I think this has been really useful, and it's even if it's just useful to me, other people might be watching it or this, that's fine. But for me, at least, it has been really useful because, again, this is also, like, I keep on going back to education. Yeah, we're not taught about it, but it's also just not something that's reported on, so people don't think about it. So it's really useful, I think, having something like this, and even the video that was made at the beginning, just learn about it really quickly. Because it's so easy, all of that. And again, just love the video. I think it was done in such a way.
Thank you so much to just Fair Up Project to give us, they push us to start to do this kind of videos where we are really happy on that. And I think, as Tara says, it's quite important to try to explain the things that easy to understand, And those kind of videos, I think, they are doing that work really well. And thank you.
Also in a very fun way.
Yeah.
We
I
actually
think
enjoy
it
watching
needs
them.
always to give some fun to it, so to
Otherwise,
make it
It
better
could
to
end up being
understand.
it could end up being very dry and boring otherwise. And
Yeah.
then
Yeah,
obviously
sure.
switch off.
This
So
topic specifically could have been
exactly.
Sure,
Like,
sure.
no one thinks of taxes as fun anyway.
No, it's not. It's actually not. So we need to do it a little bit funner to reach more people and to reach young people. That I think is quite important.
and
Definitely.
to explain it to young people in a way that they may understand it.
Exactly.
Well, thank you for sharing your expertise.
Thank you to you to organize it.
Of course. And Tara, thank you for sharing your point of view.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me on here.
It was very nice to have two different backgrounds.
Hmm.
And yeah, that is it for today. Thank you very much. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much.
Have a good
Bye-bye.
evening.
Bye
Bye.
bye.